Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here to attend our Innovating to End Urban Poverty Conference. This is a really exciting day for me, and I'm hopeful that it will be a change in trajectory in terms of how we think about poverty and how we think about addressing it. This is one of the most enduring issues and challenges that we have in this country. And it deserves the attention of everyone and the most creative thinking that everyone can bring to this. And so this conference is really designed as a forum and a focal point to get people to bring out their most creative thinking and to engage and be challenged and be forced to think about how things work, but more importantly, how we're going to change things moving forward. We have a tremendous program. I am really pleased and honored to have so many experts in the field to talk about their expertise, but also to, who are willing and open to being informed by the expertise of others. This is going to be a really interesting couple of days, and I think that the breadth of people who have come, the ideas that are represented in the framing papers and the discussion that we're about to have will be a testament to how important and how good a group we actually have. I'll say more about that in a second, but I did want to just say a few things about the origin of the conference and then introduce some of our leadership. This conference is a partnership between my center, which is the Bedrosian Center for Governance and the Public Enterprise, along with the Saul Price Center for Social Innovation. And the conference and the issues that we're going to discuss in the next couple of days really reflect both the interests of both the centers. For us at the Bedrosian Center, we are interested in the implementation issues around governance. And for everyone who's worked in policy, and particularly in governing in poverty policy, or anti-poverty policy, we recognize the challenges of actually just doing the things that need to be done to advance these policies and make them work effectively. But there's also a notion that we've been doing this for a long time. There has been movement in terms of what these programs have done to deal with poverty, but there's more to be done. And if we're going to find those new approaches, we're going to need innovation. We're going to need innovative approaches that we take to make that change. And that's what the Price Center is about. And so this is a natural marriage for those of us, for both of us, and I'm glad that we have been working together. I personally want to thank the folks at the Price Center, and especially Richard Parks, who you'll hear from in a few moments. Richard is a guy, he has this calm exterior, but he's anything but that. He's got tremendous passion, he's got great fire, and it would not be possible to do this conference without him. And so Richard, thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I also want to thank my staff. You've seen some of them already, Aubrey and Donna Jean. They actually do all the stuff. I just show up and start talking. And without them, it would be impossible for us to do anything. And then finally, I just want to say my job, I'm Raphael, Bostic. I actually didn't introduce myself. I should have done that. I just figured you all would figure out who I am. It's my job to be the MC for the day. And so you're stuck with me rambling on at various times. The timekeeper will tell me to shut up, and that will be good. But I want to, in this capacity, make sure that things keep going. And this is a conversation that we're going to have. I really do intend for this to be an exchange of ideas rather than just listening to a bunch of speeches. And to that end, we're going to, I've pushed the presenters to not present, but more talk and have us have a conversation, and I hope that we do that. So I'm going to start by moving the program on. I want to start with an introduction of my boss. Jack Knott is the Dean of the Saul Price School of Public Policy. In the time that he's been here, the Price School has transformed tremendously from a school that was regarded fairly well to one that has become a leader in areas of social policy and health policy and transportation in just about all the important areas that we have in policy space. Jack's a tremendous leader, a tremendous inspiration to all of us. And Jack, thank you for allowing us to do this. Please, let's welcome Jack Knott.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Good morning, everybody. It's really a great pleasure to see all of you here attending this very special conference. Before I begin, I also want to thank Raphael for his leadership of the Bedrosian Center and Richard Parks for his leadership of the Center for Social Innovation and this partnership. I think it's a great way for our centers to collaborate together. So I want to welcome you to this conference on Innovating to End Urban Poverty. And I look forward to learning and hearing about the kinds of ideas that you have and the high-quality, thought-provoking discussions that I anticipate over the next day and a half. As Raphael said, despite decades of serious effort to try to end and bring a decline to poverty in our country, poverty continues to be an all too familiar part of American life, especially for urban America. At this time also, income inequality has risen to be as high as it was back in the 1920s during one of the other peaks in income inequality in our country. And so despite all these programs and all the efforts to bring up people out of poverty, income inequality is at its highest point in my lifetime and your lifetime. And in addition, disparities persist in health insurance and health outcomes and other indicators of well-being that differentiate between diverse groups and between the rich and the poor that are really unacceptable and much higher than you find in many other countries. Consequently, this whole issue of poverty remains a major societal challenge that cries out for renewed and innovative public policy attention and societal attention, and is the basis, I believe, for why this conference is such an important event. The best solutions to today's poverty problem will necessarily require interdisciplinary and problem-focused approaches. The Price School addresses issues of poverty through research on low-income housing and homelessness, the influence of housing in neighborhoods on children's schooling, food deserts and nutrition in urban neighborhoods, community economic development, and access to quality health care, among many other issues. Through partnerships, our new partnership with Price Charities, we apply these approaches in the neighborhoods of City Heights in San Diego and in other locations. And we also support student practicum projects focused on poverty issues. Most recently, generous donors to the school funded a practicum project in the city of Detroit, which is a very important area for our students to look at. In addition, the school and USC are directly involved in working in the schools and neighborhoods in the vicinity of the university. My wife, Cherry Short, who is here with us today, is from the School of Social Work, and she's very heavily engaged in the neighborhood of Jordan Downs, a section of Watts just south of the campus. So this conference was conceived, as Raphael said, as a partnership between the Price School, the Price Center for Social Innovation, and the USC Bedrosian Center on Governance, two of our school's most influential centers. Policies to reduce poverty really do require innovative solutions, and as Raphael mentioned, that is the focus of the Price Center. If we are going to make progress, we really need to find new ways of doing things. The old ways of solving the problem of poverty are simply not enough, and we need to make more of an effort to address that issue in innovative ways. Also, effective governance is a key part of addressing poverty in society. Implementation of policies must occur for them to be effective and efficient. Limited government places a premium on program management and on the implementation of policies and on more than just program design. So good governance combined with innovation can really make a difference. But as Bob Ross, the president of the California Endowment, has stated, innovation alone may not be enough. it's also important to bring that innovation to scale and disseminate it across different jurisdictions. And one of our other centers in our school, our Center on Philanthropy and Public Policy, has been working assiduously on strategic partnerships between nonprofits, philanthropy, and government for that purpose. So an interdisciplinary approach bringing together innovation and governance with an eye toward implementation and dissemination of good ideas hopefully will help us better address these social challenges with solutions that will improve the quality of life for people and our communities. And these centers bring a complementary approach to and a conceptual pathway. And I'm hopeful that your participation in the kind of dialogue and conversation we're going to have here today and the insights that will emerge out of it will lead to the application of these academic concepts to better public policy and to better and effective community practice. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the program and find it provocative, illuminating, but most of all, I hope you find it worthwhile to address the persistent issue of poverty in our country. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Garrett, USC's Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. She happens to be my boss, and as the university's second-ranking officer, she has an amazing range of responsibility, including the Dornsife College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the USC Keck School of Medicine, and 17 other professional schools, in addition to this library and information technology and so on. Her primary role is as the Francis R. and John J. Dugan Professor in the USC Gould School of Law, but she also holds appointments, and I'm very proud of this, in the Price School of Public Policy, as well as Dornsife College and the Marshall School of Business. As Provost, Beth has been energetic and very important in terms of an initiative to hire transformative faculty members, including the recruitment of the very top faculty in neuroscience, the humanities, and the social science, with the goal of catalyzing targeted fields of scholarship and really advancing USC's research. So Beth has been a great friend and supporter of the Price School and of me, and it's a great pleasure to invite her to this conference. And please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jack. And I will say that one of the things that I am proudest of is my faculty appointment in the Price School of Policy, because I think that the kinds of issues my colleagues and I are addressing are enormously important to the city, to the country, and to the world. As you know, urban poverty is a critical issue with solutions that hinge on evidence-based research and scholarship across diverse areas, as well as crucial community partnerships that facilitate the translation of this work into our communities. USC has assumed a leadership role in understanding and eradicating urban poverty through interdisciplinary approaches involving many of our schools, the Price School of Public Policy, the School of Social Work, the Marshall School of Business, and the Dornsife College, to name just a few. We've seen time and again that the most effective solutions to complex problems are identified when multiple voices and scholarly perspectives come together, all focused on a common goal. Within the Price School, both the Price Center for Social Innovation and the Bedrosian Center for Governance and Public Enterprise are spearheading responses to urban poverty. I applaud their work in convening this conference and challenging us to find new ways to take on an enduring problem. I also think we should thank Robert and Allison Price and John and Judith Bedrosian for their continued strong support of the Price School and its work across academic and local communities. I think Robert and Allison are going to be here later today, and that's a tremendous testament to the importance of this work. And of course, our great thanks go to Dean Jack Knott, whose leadership at the Price School has rapidly enhanced its reputation as one of the most influential, if not the most influential, schools of public policy in the world. And of course, thanks to all of you for being willing to engage in this discussion. As Jack said, urban poverty is an issue that confronts the residents of many of the neighborhoods within our University Park and Health Sciences campus, neighborhoods that USC is committed to serving energetically and in new ways. And I just want to underscore something that Jack just said. I've been very excited to be part of this conference. I would love to be able to stay and listen to these conversations, because not only are we dealing with the enduring and very difficult and entrenched problem of urban poverty, a problem that's being exacerbated as globalization moves more and more people into cities and into very extreme situations. But one of the things I want to underscore that Jack says, and I think this conference has to take account of, is that this difficult problem endures in the new context of growing and unacceptable inequality of income and opportunity in this country. The most important change, I believe, in my lifetime in terms of economic conditions in this country has been growing inequality of opportunity and wealth, and our inability to address it in important ways through the policies that we have at our hands in government, whether at the local, state, or federal level. Policies that would include changes in the tax code, changes in safety net programs, changes in education. The strength of this country has been our ability to provide opportunity for people from all backgrounds, all income levels, to move into the middle class and into leadership positions. If that does not continue in this country, that will be a fundamental change that will undermine the promise of America for the next generations of our children. So I think it is enormously important that you address this enduring problem, a problem that we're still trying to solve with the tools of 50 years ago, when Lyndon Johnson appropriately declared an unconditional war on poverty. A war we continue to fight, but in circumstances that are different from the circumstances that Johnson and his colleagues faced so many years ago. So I really do, I wish I could stay. I have a lot of views on this, as you can see. But I really think that what you're doing is enormously important, and I look forward to seeing what you come out with. It is a problem that requires our dedication. It requires our intellectual commitment, and it requires innovation, a key theme of this conference. Innovation is one of the buzzwords. You can't go anywhere on this campus or any other campus without hearing innovation. But it is an important word for us to focus on. What does it really mean? There was a definition given by Jonathan Cowell in The Atlantic that I think is worth thinking about today. Innovation, Cowell writes, at its most basic level, is the bridging of creativity with the creation of value. That bridge between creativity and value is what we're building at USC, guided by our strategic vision, matching deeds to ambitions, guided by our commitment to consequential research, research that makes a difference in the world and in our communities. It is the bridge our faculty cross every day, and a bridge we're training our students to build in the future. The bridge between creativity and value is supported by interdisciplinary dialogue and rigorous evidence-based research. And the value created by reducing poverty and eliminating inequalities, that simply cannot be measured in dollars. It is an enormously important task. This program will inspire conversations that last long after these panels and presentations are over. And my hope is that we will act vigorously as an institution and as a society to promote new opportunities in our efforts to reduce urban poverty in this country, going forward with a renewed sense of commitment to create lasting change. Thank you and good luck.
Beth, that was fantastic. And you can see the energy and the passion that she has around these issues. And I think that's shared by just about everyone in this room, actually. But it's really gratifying for you to hear the environment that we work in, which is one where there's a true commitment and a passion to doing the right thing and doing the good thing to help make sure that America remains the America that we all grew up with. And it's really important. So on to the program. We're actually going to start in a little bit of an unorthodox way for an economist and a geeky numbers guy. Around us you see a number of pictures, and these pictures are a photo exhibit, or part of a photo exhibit that we have commissioned as part of this conference. They are done by USC professor, photo artist Matt Gaynor, and we asked Matt to go to City Heights in San Diego, where the Price family has been engaged, and bring a human story back to us. And I think he's done a tremendous job. Matt, if you wouldn't mind coming up and saying a few words.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. I'd actually like to start with a brief thank you to the Price family, to Dean Knott, to Dean Quinlan for hosting us, to the Provost for her inspiration, and to Richard Parks and Raphael for bringing us all here together today. I'd also like to express my deep gratitude to the people I've met in San Diego's City Heights neighborhood over the course of the past few months. Dozens of strangers welcomed me into their homes, their places of worship, their communal spaces, and showed me the community they've created. They told me their stories. The photographs surrounding us are the result of those exchanges, and in the truest sense of the word, they represent collaborations. It's reasonable to ask, though, what are the pictures doing here? So the profound challenges and hopeful solutions we'll be discussing over the next couple of days will often deal with issues from the perspective of the bird's eye view, which is both necessary and useful. After all, we need to understand the big picture if we're going to create policies and programs that work. These photos are here, though, to quietly remind us that every time a statistic is cited or a demographic is called out, what we're really talking about is a bunch of individuals. We're talking about beautiful people with families and faces, with kids to nurture and feed and educate. Almost 50 years to the day from when President Johnson declared his war on poverty, I met a man named William Jeffrey Emerson. He was living in a canyon in City Heights. William would have been 17 years old when Johnson announced the war on poverty and would spend the next few years of the war on poverty fighting the war in Vietnam. The path that led this veteran to life among the chaparral is long and complex, and in response to a question about how he was feeling when I met him, he simply said, "Life is hard. What are you going to do, cry?" So William's picture is over there. He's the guy with the hat. I'd like to briefly tell you some of the stories about the people who are here and maybe hint at how they might answer that question. Over in the corner is Ruth, over here. I met her after she was volunteering as part of a food distribution in City Heights. She's been doing this kind of thing for about 15 years, ever since she arrived in the community and just recognized need. Next to her is a young man named Prince. So when Prince was a toddler, he lost both his parents to the Rwandan genocide. He then spent most of his youth living in Congo and Uganda before coming to the U.S. and settling in City Heights. Within months of arriving, he was told that he needed surgery and had a very slim chance of surviving, but he had it anyway. And ever since, he's been thriving. He's done things like buy shoes for the entire village that he came from in Uganda. He's 22. He puts about 200 kids through school in Uganda with money he makes from part-time jobs while being a student. It's impossible to talk to someone like Prince and not come away feeling incredibly inspired. And this was the case over and over again with the people I met in City Heights. Next to Prince is Brianna, the young girl over there. I photographed her and her brother Christian while their mom was volunteering at yet another food distribution in City Heights, which at one point they were recipients of. Manu, who's over here, immigrated to City Heights from Cambodia, and in 1992 was involved in a confrontation that led to being shot in the face at 49th and El Cajon. He's a long-term resident of the Heights, but doesn't have permanent housing. So without community, without family, he would be living not far from William. After being displaced by conflict in Uganda, Gerald, who's right next to him, spent several years not knowing, quote, where his destination was, just randomly moving. He eventually migrated to City Heights in 2007, and since arriving has spent most of his time and energy working to help new migrants get settled and to navigate everything from government programs to new cultural norms. Basic stuff like, how do you park your car, is what he deals with on a day-to-day basis when he mentors new migrants. Over in the corner is Cisco, incredible guy with an incredible story. He spent a lifetime struggling with violence and gangs and eventually found his calling as a peacemaker, ironically, in prison. Through his work with the San Diego Lowrider Gospel Fest, which was part of his personal calling, and with his ongoing interventions with gang members and victims of violence, he's focused on creating opportunities for young people trying to get out of gangs and diffusing tensions in the community. After hearing his story, I was amazed he even survived, much less wound up a mentor. Next to Cisco is a young man named Isaiah in red. I photographed him while he was spending the afternoon cleaning a canyon with mentors from the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. The cleanup is overseen by local activists like a woman named Linda Pennington, her friend Freddie Arthur, who led me on numerous hikes in and around City Heights, most through canyons, and have dedicated the bulk of their energy to making the community a better place. In the back over there is Sarah. She's a woman that I met with several friends who had migrated from Somalia and Eritrea, who've been collectively saving funds for 3 years to create a community kitchen so that they can create catering businesses for themselves. I mean, if nothing else, what I experienced in City Heights was people who were both benefiting from larger programs, and when their larger programs weren't touching them in the ways that they needed to, they put paddle to water and created their own. Lamech over in the corner, or in the back wall also, fled ethnic conflict, this time in Burundi, with his wife and 2 children. And by the time he was able to leave a refugee camp in Tanzania, he had 5 kids. He went in with 2, by the way. To put it bluntly, he and his family probably would have been killed without assistance, resettlement, and resources to start a new life in City Heights. And also similar to others pictured, the minute he got his feet on the ground, he began helping others. So another person who's putting himself through college, has 5 kids, is the benefit of numerous programs, but has sort of rolled his own, as it were. He's renting a garage so that he can redistribute things to new migrants who've just settled in City Heights. So I'm going to summarize real quickly. I just want you to remember, every picture has a story, a face, and I hope that having these incredible people here in the room, at least to their images, and knowing a little bit about them might deepen the impact and broaden the conversations we have over the next couple of days. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to share them with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. That's, I think, a great way to start. And, listening to you, I heard income, I heard education, job training, housing, health, community, incarceration, the environment, immigration, race and gender, conflict and fear, but more importantly, and the overarching messages of helping out people and of hope and a hopefulness and an optimism about what life can be. And that's an important thing that we should all carry with ourselves as we go through the day, and remind ourselves and always be mindful that, that what we're trying to do is make that hope a little easier to carry and a little and able to take us further. And so, though this isn't a gallery, I was talking with Matt yesterday, the lighting's not perfect on these pictures. I would encourage you to take some time to take a look at them, because even though they're not perfectly displayed in terms of how they would happen in a museum, I still think they have the potential to move. And so I would give you advice to go do that and remind us of why we're here. All right, so now we can go on to the academic and applied part of the program, the solutions part of the program. We've designed these panels to be really thoughtful in their orientation. I've asked academics and researchers to start by talking about what they think some real solutions should be in terms of moving the dial. And then I want to have us test drive them by asking practitioners, people out in the field who do this on a day-to-day basis, to give their perspectives on whether our solutions are feasible, reasonable, should be heartily endorsed, or other things. Ultimately, what we're trying to get to is an answer to the question about whether something can be done and should be done to address the problem of poverty. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've heard a number of people who have said the answer is no. We should give up. We should just move on to other things. There aren't things that we can do collectively in the public sector, in the nonprofit sector, in the private sector. I actually think the answer is a little different. And I'm hopeful that as we come out today, we will find a voice to the word yes, that there is something that can be done. And hopefully this conference will give us a number of those things that we can carry together and change, at least influence the message and narrative around anti-poverty policy and our ability to make a difference. So the next couple of days, I hope that you will stay with us and enjoy our journey to yes, and get us to a place where we can have a broader, a stronger, and a richer community that joins together to improve people's access to opportunity and really deals and eliminates the problem of poverty once and for all. Ultimately, I hope that 50 years from now, when we talk about the 100th anniversary of the war on poverty, we can say we've won, right? That this is a problem that we've conquered. We understand how to deal with, and we won't have to be in the hope space. We'll be in the celebration space, because we all will have realized our our image and our vision of America as a place of opportunity. So with that, we're going to start with our first presentation for the day. This is like the only real long presentation. And it's going to be Richard Parks. Because I wanted to make sure that this conference focused on solutions, I wanted to have one presentation that just talked about the facts. So we all start with the same informational foundation. I've asked Richard to do this in an introductory framing paper. Richard's done this with a graduate student in the Price School, Danielle Williams. Danielle, please stand up and wave.
Hi.
She didn't know I was going to do that. So Danielle was great. Hopefully you'll get a chance to meet her at some point through the course of the couple of days. But Richard, the floor is yours. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Raphael. You know, many of you know Raphael from his time as the Assistant Secretary for Policy Development and Research at HUD, or as a colleague here on our faculty in the Price School. And so you know just what a wonderful person he is, what a delightful colleague. I have been told that joy is a strong word. I can tell you that it has been a joy to work with him over the last year on preparing this conference. Well, this year, we marked the 50th anniversary of America's war on poverty, an idea that rivaled Kennedy's audacious determination to put a man on the moon. Last year, we also marked the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Clearly, this was a time of big ideas and a fierce national resolve to meet the great challenges of the day. Those who labored in these challenges prevailed in many ways, and where they did not prevail, I think they succeeded in framing the issues for our time. Many have undertaken recently to debate whether we won the war on poverty or not, but that is really not our question to consider today. Rather, the 50th anniversary marks a point of departure for a conversation about what lies ahead. We will look at the policies, we've got a lot going on up here. We will look at the policies, the programs, and the practices that are working to eradicate poverty nationally. Tomorrow, we'll consider this and how we reinvigorate our country's efforts. My task now is to provide an overview of urban poverty as it exists today, and briefly outline some of the more potent causes and pernicious effects. And in this, I'm grateful again to Danielle for her work on the framing paper. Well, since 1964, the total percentage of Americans living in poverty has dropped from 19 to 15%. However, the number living in poverty has risen from 36.1 million in 1964 to 46.5 million today. When we look at the poverty thresholds, you see that for a single person, they range from $12,000 to $23,600 for a family of four. I cannot imagine living in Los Angeles as a family of four on less than $24,000 a year. However, that is the reality for many of my neighbors in the communities surrounding us today. When we look at poverty by age, we see a substantial drop in the poverty rate for the elderly over the last 50 years to 9.1%. Indeed, this was one of the war on poverty's great achievements. Conversely, children have not fared as well. Today, a staggering 22% of American children are growing up in poverty, more than 1 in 5. When we look at poverty by race and ethnicity, we see that the number of blacks in poverty was reduced over the last 50 years from 42% in 1966 to a staggering 27% today. Likewise, poverty among Hispanics has increased from 23% in 1972 to 26% in 2012. Meanwhile, rates among whites have remained relatively steady over the last 50 years. The racial and ethnic composition of those in poverty is disproportionately black and Hispanic. However, the typical or model poor person is white. Whites comprise the largest share of people in poverty, more than 40%. Now we look at poverty by nativity. we see that naturalized citizens have the lowest poverty rate at 12.4%, a poverty rate which is less than half of foreign-born non-citizens. This suggests an important link between immigration reform and reducing poverty. Looking at more recent trends, we see that between 2000 and 2012, the number of people in poverty grew by 15.5 million. That's a 3.7% percentage point increase. Likewise, we see that those living in extreme poverty or in near poverty have been on the rise as well. But given that poverty is frequently experienced episodically rather than chronically, it's important to note, it's important to note that these cross-sectional estimates do not tell us the actual number of people who experience poverty over the course of a year. Between 2009 and 2011, 31.6, nearly a third of the population experienced episodic poverty, defined as living in poverty for 2 or more consecutive months. When we look at poverty regionally, we see that both the number and the percent of those in poverty has continued to remain highest in the South. The Census Bureau's supplemental measure, which accounts for government assistance and actual living expenditures, though, tells a different story. We see with the supplemental measure that poverty is highest in the West at 19%. Similar approaches show that California has the highest poverty rate in the nation at 24%. And unfortunately, but apropos to our gathering today, Los Angeles County has the highest rate in California at 27%. I'm going to transition now just to briefly look at 5 factors that perpetuate poverty. In thinking about the subprime lending debacle and the Great Recession it sparked, I was reminded of this New Yorker cartoon. The caption reads, there it is again, the invisible hand of the marketplace giving us the finger. As we know, Wall Street's exploitative actions had a devastating impact on both the middle class and on the poor. When we look at income, we see that income from the bottom 80% of Americans has fallen since the Great Recession. The increase in income inequality that we've heard so much about has been driven by gains in the top quintile. The trends of stagnant income and growing inequality are obviously long-standing. However, the Great Recession has exacerbated these challenges. The housing market crash, the foreclosure crisis, the near halt in construction, and the loss of manufacturing jobs hit our metropolitan areas especially hard. The Congressional Budget Office reports that employment rates have recovered much more slowly than they did in any of the 4 previous recessions. By the end of 2013, there were approximately 6 million fewer jobs than would have been expected. Now, while all demographic groups were impacted by the recession, the increases in unemployment were not distributed equally among all workers. Job losses were felt most acutely by minorities, by individuals under the age of 25, by those without a high school diploma, and initially by men. The growing concentration of poverty is another major factor of urban poverty's persistence. Nearly half of the people living in poverty live in census tracts where poverty is concentrated or extreme. And between 2000 and 2009, the population living in census tracts with a poverty rate of 40% or more rose by a third. You know, one of the ways that concentrated poverty takes hold is through the corrosive impact of low expectations. I was reminded of this 5 years ago when my oldest son was old enough to was entering kindergarten. And my wife and I, committed to public education, probably like many of you in the room, we decided to enroll him in a local school, kind of with eyes wide open, I should say. But, we hoped to make that local school and to make public education work, both for our kids and all the kids in our neighborhood in South LA. So as a father of a kindergartner at my first parent meeting, the school governance committee was reviewing the data, the school test scores from the previous year. For third graders, they were testing, only 27% were proficient in English language arts. In math, only 29% were proficient. Half the fifth graders were leaving the school without proficiency in English, unprepared for the critical transition to middle school. And as the agenda quickly moved on, I felt compelled to intervene. And as I explained to this group, I said, these numbers, they're devastating. As a father of a child here, they break my heart. What is our plan to turn this around? And one of the teachers very quickly responded, Mr. Parks, we need to remember who these kids are and where they're from. I said, we need to remember that this is my son, and these are his friends, and this is our community. And these results do not meet our expectations. They must be changed. That has started kind of a side career of organizing parents and unfortunately alienating school administrators. But I think that it speaks to the impact of low expectations in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty, not just in schools, but in every institution. Low expectations exact a heavy price on children. Patrick Sharkey has pointed out that over 70% of African Americans who live in today's poorest, most racially segregated neighborhoods are from the same families that lived in the ghettos in the 1970s. To understand why the children of the civil rights era have made such minimal progress toward racial equality, he writes, we need to consider what has happened to the communities and the cities in which they have lived over the past 4 decades. Today, urban children literally inherit the ghetto. Now, I think it's important to note that a person doesn't wake up in the morning and decide, I'm not going to go live in that wealthier neighborhood with better schools and public safety, right? Rather, social stratification is something that is imposed, and it triggers a cascade of negative impacts that, again, fall especially hard on children. Secondly, thirdly, we look at discrimination. Racial and ethnic discrimination reinforces poverty via their impact on education, employment, housing opportunities, and sentencing. There are many examples that we could look at. We'll turn first to education, and I found this one particularly compelling. There's 2 maps here. The one on the left shows the distribution of income in Los Angeles County. The lighter areas are lower income. On the right, the map shows the distribution of neighborhood racial composition by the percent of Black and Latino neighborhoods. The dots on the left show the location of middle schools. The dots on the right show the location of high schools. On both maps, red dots represent schools with 21% or more teachers with 1 to 2 years of experience. You'll notice that the red dots are almost exclusively on poor minority communities. Now, we layer on a public policy of laying off teachers by seniority, last in, first out, and you quickly see where the budget axe fell. LAUSD, like school districts across the country, balanced their budget on the backs of low-income minority children who could least afford those cuts. My son's school across the street lost over 60% of its teaching staff, while schools in wealthier neighborhoods on the west side lost almost none. But discrimination manifests itself in a whole variety of areas, including unemployment. Research shows that Blacks are less than half as likely to be considered for a low-wage position as similarly qualified white candidates. The Department of Labor has also found pervasive differentials in the earnings of minorities relative to whites. In the area of housing, minorities experience discrimination in almost every aspect of the housing process, ranging from the units presented and the financing offered. Discrimination also impacts sentencing and justice outcomes. For example, though blacks and whites have similar drug use rates, blacks are more likely to be arrested and are generally given longer sentences. And the list, of course, goes on. In summary, discrimination in ways both subtle and overt remains an all too pervasive factor in perpetuating poverty. Next, we turn to incarceration. While employment rates for young white men with a high school diploma decreased from 98% to 91% between 1973 and 2007, for black men it decreased from 96% to 73%, due in a large part to increased numbers experiencing incarceration. There is substantial research that suggests that the stigma of having a criminal record, the lost years of labor force participation, and the low levels of average education among the incarcerated have a significant negative impact on incomes. In fact, between 1980 and 2004, it's estimated that the poverty rate would have decreased by 2.8 percentage points if mass incarceration had not occurred. Finally, we look at family structure. In 2011, the poverty rate for children in married coupled families was 10.9%. By contrast, the poverty rate for children in female-headed families was 47.7%. This difference is especially troubling because the percentage of American children who live in female-headed families has been increasing for the last 50 years. Hilary Hoynes has shown that these changes account for a 3.7 percentage point increase in poverty rates. To summarize, hurricane-force headwinds in the economy, the concentration of poverty, discrimination, mass incarceration, and the change in family structure have all contributed to poverty. While the American dream remains a powerful myth in our culture, reinforced by anecdotes and stories, it is not supported by the data. Joseph Stiglitz, winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics, notes that the chances of an American citizen making his way from the bottom to the top is less than those of citizens in other advanced industrial countries. While we often talk about rags to riches stories, Patrick Sharkey writes in his excellent book, Stuck in Place, that the most rigorous recent work on economic mobility in America suggests that rags to rags and riches to riches are the norm. Our American dream has hit a wall. What is different now is that poverty's impacts are much more pervasive. Poverty is affecting us all. Income has declined for the bottom 80% of Americans since the start of the Great Recession. Nearly a third of Americans have experienced episodic poverty over the last couple years, and more than 1 in 5 American children are growing up in poverty. These statistics raise important questions. Can a house so divided still stand? Can we be safe in a society where the rewards of work accrue only to the wealthy and where urban poor children inherit the ghetto? Can we afford to continue to forego the latent talents of those who are poor? Given that the American dream has hit a wall and that urban poverty affects us all, clearly our current state of affairs is an urgent call to action. We have important work to do together over the next day and a half. Our hope is that together we will make progress in defining a new urban agenda, one that restores the American dream and rekindles a fierce national resolve to end urban poverty. Raphael and I are delighted to be on the journey with you. Let's get started.